Hi, everyone. It's Rob Russell with Resort Income Optimization. Thanks for joining. It's April, and we're going to talk about a couple of ways to drive direct bookings. And we're also going to talk about some COVID updates. Obviously, that's top of mind for everyone, although some people are certainly suffering some burnout from that. There's a lot of information all over the place. Anytime you watch the news, it's COVID and Corona all the time, right? So anyway, we are going to provide some updates and some advice and some best practices that we've been seeing, but I also want to show you guys how to do better in your direct bookings as well when things inevitably get ramped up. So I'm just going to give it another few seconds here for some other folks to join, and we'll get started. Every month we do this for our email subscribers. We also try and live broadcast it to the Facebook group for those of you that follow our Facebook page. This is a monthly webinar. We repeat it a couple of times and for different time zones around the world. So anyway, let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to shift over to some slides and give you guys some of our thoughts on what we've been seeing the last couple of weeks. Okay, so let me know if you can see the slides, and I'll try and keep an eye on the chat box, but if you don't hear my voice or you don't see slides, then let me know. So, all right, I'm going to go ahead and get started and kind of go through the presentation here. And as I said, we're going to talk about COVID updates as well as how to ramp up your direct bookings. There's a lot of hotels that I see who are missing just a few details that would make their direct bookings much better. So we're going to look at those. So first I want to kind of provide a little philosophical thought, which is, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change and the courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. So I think that's a very appropriate quote for these days. I just wanted to remind everyone of that. Along those lines as well, I'm a big fan of the Pareto principle, which is the 80-20 rule. So I do see a lot of hotels kind of worrying or spending a lot of time on things that are not actually going to improve anything. So think about what you can control and what's important for your business once things get started, and focus your time and energy there. I suspect most of you have some free time these days. It may not be what you want, but time is probably what most people have these days. So let's go ahead and get started. So let's look at mobile share of traffic and conversion. When we think about direct bookings, I find that one of the areas that does not get enough attention and a lot of hotels are missing is related specifically to mobile. So first, let me size it, then we'll talk about some things that we should be doing with mobile and some other things. But in terms of traffic, first of all, the share of web traffic has gone from 16% in 2013 to 53% in 2019. So obviously a big growth. Now this is typically mobile web traffic, so it probably excludes mobile applications as well, which are usually counted separate. And then share of organic search is also pretty high and growing, doubling since 2013. So 30% and now 60% of organic search traffic is mobile. And that means that if somebody sees your ad or your link as in the results, they click on that, they're going to be on a mobile device very often when they land on your page. So that means that your landing page or your booking engine have to be very good on mobile. Let's look at conversion. So that's the second thing, right? So conversion, if we look at desktop versus mobile and the change from 2013 to 2019, right? Conversion rates, 3.3% and now 4.1%. A lot of the experiences have been improved and made better. And a lot of people, a lot of hotels that I speak to don't really know what the conversion rate should be on their direct booking engine. We'll take a look at that in more detail. Mobile is consistently lower. Sometimes if it's a bigger transaction or it's a little more complicated, they can't quite complete the transaction, or maybe they decide to go do it on a computer just to be safe, perhaps. There's a variety of reasons, but mobile is consistently a lower conversion rate. Some of that is also because the experiences are so bad, right? you are dealing with a very small screen, and sometimes it is more difficult to do a transaction that way. So let's look at this in some more detail. So what helps conversion? So quality of traffic is very important. You have to get the right traffic from the right places, and it's not always the cheapest traffic, but you have to get the kind of people who are actually looking to take a trip to your hotel or your market or your island or your region of the world. I find that a lot of hotels build a lot of traffic that's not really quality traffic, and so their conversion rates are very low. And then the other thing is there must be ease of use in the user experience and the user interface. And that's where I think a lot of independent hotels and even chains have a pretty poor experience. You know, the OTAs have a much better experience. A lot of their mobile applications, and they dominate mobile in most parts of the world, the OTAs do. A lot of that is also because of the application, right? They have an application that's downloaded and used by millions of people. But ease of use, even on your mobile website, I think there's a lot of things that could be better and easier, and we'll talk about that in some more detail. Now, quantity of traffic is easy to do, right? But it is not necessarily going to help conversion. In fact, more traffic usually hurts conversion. So I think the thing to do is think about conversion first. Even though your ads, you know, in terms of the customer journey, they start out by seeing an ad, clicking an ad, then landing on your page and then converting, right? But the way you should think about conversion is think about conversion first so that you get that right and get that optimized with small amounts of traffic. Then you can spend money to generate a lot more traffic, and that'll ultimately be a much better ROI if you do it that way. Let's see here. Okay, so let's look at consumer behavior. And for travel specifically, you know, they were asked, how do you use your mobile phone to find inspiration or ideas? You know, the leading one here is, not surprisingly, right, is, let me get this out of the way here. Search engine for general web search is 70%, far and away the #1 option, right? And then there's search engine for images or photos. You know, this is another overlooked opportunity. When consumers search, you know, here it says 39% of them, you know, look for inspiration by searching images and photos. And, you know, your photos on your website are not going to come up if they're not properly tagged, right? So there are, in your content management system where you manage the pages, there are areas where you can tag the photographs with specific keywords. So you want to do that so that your photographs will show up in the Google image searches, and then more of these people may find out about your hotel or your destination. So that's also important. Social media websites, also not surprisingly, a major source of inspiration and ideas. OTAs and Airbnb also in there. Online video like YouTube. And YouTube is often classified as a social media website. You know, further down, let's see, where's, I think maybe on a different slide, there's mobile advertising or something like that. But keep in mind that all of these top categories here, search engine for general web search, as we saw, most of that is mobile. And search engine for images or photos, you know, that's also a lot of mobile. And social media, as we'll see, is 80–90% mobile as well. So a lot of these other categories, these are, you know, categories where people tend to use their mobile device a lot for anything, right? Not just for inspiration or ideas. Next, let's look at how travel agents use different forms of media and what they do to attract new clients. Travel agents include OTAs, and obviously even for your own hotel, you're doing a bit of battle online with the OTAs who are also trying to sell your hotel. So in search and things like that, they are also trying to find these travelers who are going to come and book your hotel or your destination. So it's useful to look at what they're doing, right? So #1 for them is email, and email is often overlooked by a lot of hotels. So email can be very effective if it's done properly with opt-in, you know, principles, and you send quality emails that are valuable and interesting to the audience. That can sometimes be a challenge, the content, but it can still be done. Social media as well, you know, a major source of new clients for travel agents, the agent's own website. You know, then there's, you know, newsletters, travel nights and coffees, which are more in person, I guess, charity community events, and internet ads. Mobile here is mobile advertising. So that's not necessarily the most effective spend. It can be effective, but it's not what I was referring to before. You know, when I was talking about mobile, I was talking about search, social media, email, all those kinds of things. So, you know, email and social media, again, at the top, you know, these things are consumed primarily on mobile devices. Something like 60, 70, 80% of email is consumed on a mobile device. The majority of email has been consumed on a mobile device for many years. And I know that I still receive emails from fairly large companies that are not optimized for mobile, which is still surprising to me. So that will affect your performance there as well. So let's look at mobile in advertising channels, just a few more comments. So Facebook, this is new 2020 data, and this has been pretty consistent for a few years. This has not changed too much in the last couple of years. But people who use Facebook, 98% of Facebook users use mobile, and 78% use only mobile. Like, it's the only way they access Facebook. They don't even go on a desktop or a tablet. And consumers also prefer a mobile app to book air travel and accommodation by 58 and 53%. So as I was saying before, it's not just mobile web, it's also a mobile app. And as we'll see when we talk about some of the changes with COVID, that can be relevant as well. Plus, one final word here on this is, you know, 5G is starting to be installed around the world on different telecom providers. And when 5G networks become pervasive and 5G devices also become very common around the world, it's going to open up many new applications, and consumers are going to be doing even more things on their mobile phone. And it can open up, you know, I think sort of face-to-face conversations might become more common. Lots of opportunities are going to open up there, some of which we cannot even imagine yet. So that's something else to keep in mind in terms of mobile and COVID going forward. There's also some other things. I don't want to go off on a tangent, but when it comes to mobile, there's also ways that you can deliver keys, or even just tell consumers what their room number is, right? So that's part of the experience at the hotel. Upon arrival, they can skip checkout altogether. So, you know, I don't want to go too far down that rabbit hole right now, but it is something to keep in mind. This technology has been around for a long time, but it can be also very expensive to do that. So it's similar to, if you have an Apple phone, it's like the wallet, and you can receive credentials in there for tickets and so on. And then you just tap your phone to go through the carousel. So that's the way you could open a hotel room door. However, you would have to retrofit all your doors with those locks that can properly receive and read that information to authorize that person to enter the room, and not authorize just anybody to enter the room, right? So anyway, kind of a side note, but an important thing related to mobile. So let's talk about search a little bit. So in general, higher cost per click should result in higher conversion rates. Remember that Google is an auction market, right? So other players, other advertisers have kind of bid up some of these keywords because they convert well into revenue or bookings, and they're valuable. That's why they go from $2 to $3 to $4 or $10 and so on, is because that particular keyword can be turned into a sale that is highly valued. So don't just choose low cost keywords. Generally, they're going to have lower conversion. You might get lucky. There's a lot of different keyword strategies, but cheaper is not necessarily better. You could drive a lot of traffic to your website, and they could be people that are just, you know, have no interest in booking a hotel room in your location. The other thing is, think about broad search terms like hotels in the Bahamas, and then more narrow search terms like scuba diving hotels in the Bahamas, if you happen to specialize in scuba diving. But then you can also be too specific, right? If you're very specific, like your own branded search, you know, like Rob's Bahamian Resort, is just kind of a made up resort with my name, but that might be great, and I might place very high for that term, maybe even organically, right? But a lot of people are not going to be typing that term in, right? If I'm a smaller boutique independent hotel somewhere in the world, there's not going to be a lot of people typing that search term into Google, right? So think about that as well, and you know, that'll improve your ROI when it comes to search. Here's another thing: the cost per click in terms of paid search. It can vary a lot based on location, right? Here are a few terms: you know, hotels in Auckland, hotels in Dublin, and then Barcelona hotels and hotels in Sydney. You can see that there's a lot of different rates. Los Angeles, hotels in Stowe. I think this is Stowe, Vermont. It's cheaper. And then Turks and Caicos is cheaper. And then hotels in Lake of the Woods. This is an area, you know, most of you probably don't know, but it's near the border between Canada and the US. So a very remote region, but they have a lot of lakes there and a lot of fishing, and they have some fairly inexpensive fishing lodges and so on. And, you know, very popular, but the cost per click has not been bid up as high as some of these other big cities or big destinations. So let's talk a little bit about Google Hotel Ads then, right? This is a specific type of ad unit that shows up, and Google will display this if the search term is hotels in X, right? Hotels in Paris, hotels in New York, hotels in Seattle, hotels in Beijing, hotels in the Bahamas, right? We'll show a specific type of ad unit that I'll show you in a second. It is a good idea to plug your booking engine into Google so that, you know, it will display your direct booking engine rates and availability and photographs and things like that. And also the bookings go directly into your booking engine. If you don't make that connection, then Google will probably send that traffic to a variety of other places like OTAs and TripAdvisor and so on. And then you end up paying commission for that, right? So you want to try and get that that traffic into your booking engine. So this is what the ad unit looks like. If you haven't seen it before, let me get the pointer here. Okay, there we go. So up here at the top, this is a paid ad. You can kind of ignore that. They always have one or two paid ads at the top, or sometimes more. But here with the map, this is where the Google Hotel Ads, this is the ad unit right here, this whole box. So you know, you can see there's a map. You can put in the dates. It gives you some price ranges and number of guests and ratings and a bunch of other things that you can filter and sort by. And then there's a few hotels that show up here. There's actually a total of 1,000. And then once you click on this, then it starts to narrow the search, and it'll show you some of the top hotels here that fit your criteria. You can also zoom in on the map and so on, but it starts to look a lot like an OTA, right? So this has been very effective. It's been around for several years, I think 8 or 9 years, but it has been evolving and changing. It's now called Google Hotel Ads. And it's been evolving and changing, and Google has been giving it more visibility and more space. You can see here, this is a big chunk of space, right? If you look at each of these listings down here, they could probably, you know, fit 4 or 5 listings in there, right? But they've allocated a lot of space, and what's happened is they've improved the product for consumers to use, and they've given it a lot more visibility. So it has really been growing like crazy. You know, TripAdvisor used to be the #1 meta search and travel destination in the world, I believe. And a lot of people think Google, just in the last year or two, has surpassed even TripAdvisor. So the product's been around for a long time, but it's much improved recently, and it's gotten a lot more visibility. So as a channel, what's new is that it's become much more important as a channel, and it's a very big and growing channel. Let's see. change the page. Okay. So conversion, let me move the laser pointer out of the way. So you spend a lot of money to get people to your site. So you should want to convert as many as possible. It has a dramatic effect on the return on investment of your marketing spend. So, convert as many as possible. And, you can do that by highlighting unique features with, beautiful photos and easy navigation, obviously, and also provide them with a reason to book now. A lot of hotels still don't really provide any sort of urgency or a reason to book now. That will significantly improve your conversion rates as well. And many guests arrive ready to book, so make sure that they can switch into transaction mode. A lot of hotels like to sell the property with words and pictures and say how great they are, and all of that's great, and it is very important for many users. But many users are ready to book, and you don't want to get in the way of that, right? So have a button that's persistent throughout the mobile experience as well, so that they can immediately switch into booking mode, and maybe they even arrived and they're ready to book as soon as they arrived at your site. And you want to enable them to press a button and go straight into booking. And don't put obstacles in front of them, like join our email list, right? You don't want to do that if they're trying to book. Let's see here. And try to remove any obstacles or distractions from booking. Okay, yep, I just covered that. So here are some average conversion rates for hotels. So this is more detail of what we were talking about earlier. So I'm going to look at several different sources because it's different research, and I think it's useful to look at different ones just to make sure it's not an outlier. But HEBS is a major advertising agency that does a lot of work with a lot of hotels, and they find that most hotels average just under 2% in terms of the amount of traffic to their website that converts into a booking. And then we looked at fast booking as well. They've done some research on this. And the average hotel website is 2.2% conversion rate, and the top 20% of performers convert 5.6% of their traffic into bookings, and the bottom 20%, pretty close to zero. So there's a lot of direct booking sites that are either difficult or, just very difficult to book, I guess. Especially mobile as well, since a lot of that traffic is mobile. So the bottom 20% doing very little. Now, Adobe Analytics did break out desktop and mobile. So, the average performers on desktop converted 1.8% of their traffic into bookings. The average performers on mobile converted 0.5% on mobile. And then the top performers in desktop converted 3.5% of their traffic into a booking. And the top performers on mobile converted almost 1% of their traffic into bookings. So most studies agree on the 2% average. So, you could be doing a lot better than this. It's certainly very possible. I've seen many hotels do a lot better than 2% and even better than the 5.6% of the top 20% here. It takes a special kind of hotel or a special kind of traffic. But 2% is a good average to try to beat. 2 and maybe the 5 or 6% is also a good target. Europe tends to convert higher than the US and Asia. And it depends a lot on the quality of your website and the quality of the traffic. So keep those two things in mind. And really, when I say quality of the website, I'm really talking about two experiences, right? Desktop and mobile. And then, try to have some unique features and also higher cost traffic may also convert better. It obviously costs more, but it may convert into more bookings. So you might find that even higher cost traffic delivers a better ROI. It's possible. So ease of use, just a few more words on that. So remember that frustrated customers can leave very easily. They can do that on a desktop, but they can especially do that on mobile, right? Just by a couple flicks of the finger, right? And so work hard to eliminate any friction that's in the system, right? make sure that they can land and do things very easily and smoothly. And if a task can be accomplished, that is not sufficient. It must be easy on mobile. So I see a lot of either hotels or even other businesses who, you know, have a mobile app or a mobile web page, and it's possible to complete a transaction, but it's really difficult. And a lot of people are just not going to have the patience to deal with that. Many visitors have never been to your property or your website. So some of the things that may seem very obvious to you are really not obvious to them. Remember that some visitors arrive here after visiting many different websites and then clicking a link that may also be on mobile. And remember that, you know, they may want to get in and out. So some people are just arriving here and they want to explore and spend time looking at your property, but some people just want to do a transaction quickly and get on with their day. Make it easy to pick dates, see rooms and rates, and then pay. These are kind of the three critical stages that I think about. You know, when somebody decides to book, the first thing is, okay, when do you need to come? And then do you need to see rooms and rates? And so that they can select a room and select the rate if there's different rates. And then pay. In other words, finalize the transaction with a credit card. I assume most of you require a credit card for an online or mobile reservation, but that sometimes ends up being a little bit difficult. So you want to try and make that as easy as possible. Lastly, I would say, you know, conversion value add. There's two things that I'd like to talk about here. One is, you know, offer exclusive amenities. And I know you've probably heard that before. I've heard it in a lot of places, but I still see a lot of hotels that just don't do it. So sometimes it's free breakfast, but you may also have that on your OTAs and other channels. It could be a free checkout, a free lounge chair at the beach. It could be a free shuttle to the airport. So think about something that you can offer them that's exclusive, just so you can say, you know, you only get this here. Now, the other thing I'll probably talk about later in the COVID section too, is that making adjustments and changes to travel plans might become a lot more important in the future, and that's much easier when you book direct. So there is some early research to show that consumers in the future may start to book airline tickets directly with the airlines, because making changes is much easier that way. I think when COVID first kind of started to roll out in different parts of the world and things started to shut down and people tried to get home and modify their travel plans for different reasons, having the OTA in the middle made it very difficult to modify and change an airline ticket or a hotel reservation and get all of the funds kind of reallocated properly. So I think a lot of consumers may be sensitive to that and may want to book directly. So that's something to mention in your direct booking channel as an exclusive benefit, I guess. Also, OTA comparison tools. So many of you may be familiar with TripTease, but there's also a lot of booking engines that have a built-in tool that's very similar. This particular one is Vertical Booking. That's one that I'm familiar with, but it's not the only one. But you know, what these tools do, these OTA comparison tools do, is, you know, they will show you the price on the website, and they will proactively say, hey, by the way, you know, here's the price on the other OTAs. So there's no need for you to keep shopping around. You might as well just go ahead and book here, because if they keep shopping around and they go to an OTA, you know, they might, not only do you pay commission in that channel, but you might not even get the booking, right? They might get distracted, see another hotel, and book somewhere else. So they're at your hotel. You want to try and close them here. And one way to do that is to try and convince them that there's not a better deal in other channels. Okay. So kind of a quick summary. I think this may be the last slide on conversion. Some do's and don'ts. You know, have a clear button for reservations so that they can switch into transaction mode anytime. Clickable phone call and email. This is also important. You know, with a phone, you know, when there's a phone number there, you want to make sure that that is clickable, because then it's so convenient and easy for them to just click it, and the phone will will dial the number, right? With desktop, if a website is designed for desktop, that is often not the case, right? So that's another sort of design difference. It's, you know, slightly technical, but it's super easy. So you want to make sure that your phone number is clickable to call. Same thing goes with email, although that's not a very common error because, you know, email has been clickable, you know, from the beginning of the internet almost. You know, when you post email on a website, it's clickable and then it opens up an application to send an email. But definitely do that. Make sure your number can be dialed globally as well. Sometimes 800 numbers and other sort of number formats cannot be dialed from depending on the person's location. So you might not get it perfect for everyone in the world, but just keep it in mind and try and make sure that link, especially if you are a hotel that has a lot of guests coming from Europe or the United States, at least take a look at that and try and make sure that your number can be dialed from most of those places. A mobile-friendly UI, as I mentioned, is really important. That involves navigation and everything else. And then get creative with content, you know, pictures and words. Sometimes being creative is actually about compressing, and less is more, right? So when you talk about or think about mobile, there's limited space there. And if it's too cluttered, then people may kind of tune out or might miss the point. So pictures can be worth 1,000 words, I always believe. And so I like pictures as a way of kind of conveying an idea or a thought. So get creative with some of those things as well. But don't get so creative that you end up with pop-ups, for example, that might get in the way of different browsers. Layouts that are overly creative can cause problems on different browsers and devices. So people are viewing your website not only from different devices, but also from different browsers. So I find that a lot of hotels still think that Internet Explorer is the dominant browser on the internet, and it's really not. Internet Explorer, I think, is, gosh, I haven't looked at that data in a couple of years, but it's maybe 20–30% of internet traffic. The dominant browser is now Google Chrome. That is probably in large part because of so many Android phones, and that's, you know, Google Chrome is the browser there on mobile devices. Also, Apple Safari because of PCs as well as phones. And Firefox also has a decent chunk of the market. So those are things to think about, as well as browsers, as well as devices. And if someone clicks a book now button, this is not the time to ask them to sign up for your email newsletter. And I've seen hotels do that. It's good to try and get people to join your email newsletter, but not if they're ready to transact. Okay, let's switch gears a little bit to COVID. I'm going to do a quick check here to see if there's any questions or comments in there. Okay, everybody seems to be listening to the material just fine. Okay, all right, so let's look at the current state of the industry and what may be coming soon, what lies ahead. Let's see if I can get the slide to change. Okay, so it is uncertain when travel will resume, of course, but some industry professionals are predicting that it could be as early as mid-June. Now, even in mid-June, it's not going to ramp up rapidly, probably. It'll probably ramp up slowly. Again, depends a lot on what your market is and where your customers come from and what market you're located in. I would suspect, for example, there is not going to be a lot of leisure travel to New York City for a while. It's hard to say how quickly that'll ramp up. There may be some surprises, but you know, I would not expect that in mid-June. Same thing goes for some other countries that are particularly hard hit. Or maybe, you know, we're hit by Corona later. So it depends on your location and the location of your guests. But mid-June, things could start to improve. Even actually in April and May, we've got some clients who've already started to see an uptick in their business travelers who travel by car. So there are a number of properties that we have that we work with who have, you know, a sizable amount of business travelers who travel by car. And so, you know, they're getting some occupancy from that. I'm trying to put a number on it. I would say occupancies are still around 10 or 15%, maybe 20 if they're lucky. So that's the kind of occupancy that they're getting. Most Americans plan to stay domestic this summer. Not too much of a surprise. I think I have not seen research on Europe, but I would suspect that it's pretty similar. In other words, if people are going to travel over the summer or sort of starting in June, July, August, that type of travel, you know, will shift probably more towards driving versus, you know, getting on an airplane. But we'll see, right? If the airlines can make people feel safe, I know a lot of people who are dying to get on a plane and go to a Caribbean island. So certainly some people will do that. Also, airlines may merge, and budget airlines or some weaker airlines that are weaker financially could be swallowed up, and a lot of flights may be cut even from some of the larger, stronger airlines. Certainly, they're all cut now, but even when things ramp up, there could be less flights, which might mean that the planes will be more packed and more crowded. It could mean more expensive airfares, even though they have less capacity. But some people are also predicting that airfare prices could drop throughout this year and 2021. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with airfares. You know, it's all about the supply and demand, and it's right now it's still hard to predict how rapidly the demand will come back. It will not be overnight, but it could be fast, it could be slow. Those are the things we'll have to keep monitoring. Also, fees may increase for baggage, certainly, as well as seat choices. There could be a variety of things that come about with COVID. You know, more distance and more space. I've already seen airlines reconfiguring planes and seats. So that could drive some higher fees for people who want more space, you know, more distance between them and other passengers. Also, ticket changes could incur fees. On the other hand, you know, I'm going to kind of provide an alternative view here in point number 7 too, which is that flexibility, you know, is probably going to be more common with many travel companies, and that means cancellations and changing plans. And many people think that could result in more direct purchases. So there is some research to indicate that in the US at least, consumers are more likely to book their flight directly with the airline instead of an intermediary. So I think some people, you know, that went through a little bit of chaos or heard about stories in the last few months, they're going to try and book directly so that they can make changes easily. So that's something to keep in mind. It could also translate for hotels. Perhaps consumers will also book hotels directly for the same reason. That way, you know, they have a relationship there. They know who they're talking to, and you can also be more flexible with the guest. A few other points here. Travel insurance may also become more important than it did in the past, again, because of people who may want to change their itinerary or may be forced to change their itinerary. Food and drink offerings may change for planes and hotels. So buffets and things of that nature will probably go away. The hotels that still want to provide breakfast will probably do it in some sort of self-service, you know, packaged container. Even the Four Seasons in New York is doing that. So I think consumers are going to start expecting that type of thing more and more. I have seen, you know, some chains like Hampton Inn who traditionally offer, you know, breakfast included. They're providing bag lunches, but I've also heard from several hotel managers that, you know, they put all of these breakfasts into bags and then, you know, none of the guests take it, and so that food gets wasted. So, you know, I think operationally hotels are going to have to figure out, you know, what's best for their specific type of guest. Another thing that's come up is people may choose lesser known destinations for a couple of reasons. One reason includes ethical travel, which is kind of a new term for me, but I guess what that means is people who are traveling to a destination specifically to help that destination. So if it's an area of the world that's particularly devastated economically, they might travel there just to help that country, with some of their spending, right? Or people may do lesser known destinations simply to avoid crowds. Long-term travel may be the new norm, and the number of digital nomads might increase. This may not affect a lot of you. It's a bigger factor in Airbnb. For those of you that don't know what digital nomads are, these are people who, they either have a job or a company that is 100% internet based, and so they can work from anywhere in the world as long as they have a laptop and an internet connection, right? And so they're digital nomads, and they might live in Thailand for 6 months. They might live in Hungary for 6 months, and they might move every 6 months to live in a different place. Very often they are single people. There are actually, whole new lodging models that are built for these types of people, where they have like a common area for working, and they have almost like dorm rooms, and people can reserve rooms in different parts of the world. Some people even live this lifestyle with children. So it seems hard to me, but it certainly happens. So I don't know if it's a big factor for many of you, but I thought I would explain that. Let's see here. Okay, some countries in North America may not be able to travel internationally for a while, so we'll have to monitor that closely as well to see how many are allowing that. And they may be subject to additional health screenings as well when they do travel. Also, virtual experiences may become more important. Now, some of you have virtual tours online, and that's good. I think it could be extended even further to things like virtual reality, where you can actually go and experience, walking down a beach, or doing a mountain bike journey, or surfing or skiing or something like that, or even golf, or maybe a spa, right? You can have a virtual reality experience in your spa. So if you have special amenities like that, you could think about creating a virtual reality experience. I do think that as consumers are locked up at home more and more, a lot of people are going to opt for this. These devices have become quite affordable. You can view some of this content with a mobile phone in a $50 device that holds your phone, but there's even more advanced ones that cost $200 to $250. So it's not thousands of dollars. Yes, it's an expensive gadget, but I think a lot of people, this could be a tipping point for that kind of technology, because people are so locked up and they're going to have less real experiences. So it's a little bit of a substitute for that. Or hopefully not a replacement for real travel, but it certainly allows people to check out different places before going there in real life. All right, let me see if I can click. There we go. Also, force majeure extensions in travel agent contracts. I know Hotel Beds has extended theirs. I think now it's out to May 31st. But make sure you check with your travel agents on changes to the contract terms. So for example, Expedia was not even displaying non-refundable rates. Other OTAs, for example, are waiving non-refundable rates. So if somebody wants to cancel for these reasons, they will honor that cancellation. I also saw a lot of hotels that took direct bookings. They also had that flexibility. So I think that's something to keep in mind. All right, here are some ideas of what to do. This has to do with staff and management. I'm going to cover a couple of different categories, but remember that staff looks to leaders for reaction when they're scared. So stay positive. So this is similar to if you're on a plane and there's a lot of turbulence, people tend to look at the flight attendants to see if they're really alarmed or if they're relaxed. And if they're relaxed, then people tend to stay relaxed, right? If they're really concerned, then people start to get a little more concerned. So keep in mind that people are looking at you that way. Also, for staff, make sure to, impress upon them the importance that they go home from work and limit any other stops. If they make a lot of stops on the way, to their home or from home to work, that could increase the odds that they get infected. And guests are counting on each employee to be responsible. So make sure that they're at least thoughtful about it. Obviously, as people start trying to live normal lives and go to work and go home, there's always a risk that they can be infected, but hopefully we're finding ways to lower those risks. But just make sure that the staff knows that, guests are counting on them to be responsible and to just limit the stops and not do more than necessary. If staff must interact with guests, suggest that they keep it limited. So a lot of people in hospitality are very friendly and even like to hug and things like that. And so I think a lot of guests are going to be very understanding now if conversations are limited and there's no hugging and you keep interactions to kind of a minimum. Polite, of course, but they don't have to be as much as before. Also, assemble a sanitation crew that actively walks through the hotel sanitizing, perhaps, throughout the day. Make them visible so the guests also feel more secure. Obviously, you want to be cleaning and truly making things more secure and sanitized, but make sure the guests are aware of that, whether it's in the hotel while they're there or even on your website before they make their booking. Stay open-minded and flexible. You might be washing dishes or sweeping sidewalks. And I heard this actually from a general manager of a very large Four Seasons hotel, So Four Seasons is, one of the leaders in hospitality. And one of the reasons is that, they have a culture that, you do what needs to be done. And so even though a lot of employees are furloughed and maybe laid off and it's hard to keep service levels up, sometimes if something needs to be done and you're a manager of one department, you might need to do something else, and be prepared to do things you have not done before. Also, try and maintain service levels as much as possible. So in some cases, it will not be possible. Just to use the Four Seasons as an example again, in places like New York where they're offering free lodging for healthcare workers, they're not offering room service, and even laundry service is different, right? At check-in they give people 3 bags. One is for garbage, one is for towels, and one is for linens. And when the guest has a bag that's full, they call the desk and they leave it on the inside of their door, and then housekeeping comes and takes the bag out without fully entering the room and takes the bag away. And so that is obviously a different level of service. Some employees have never been in this industry in a recession, maybe only in the recent growth years. So, try and convey to them that, we as people or as an industry have faced difficult situations before and we got past it. And many hotels have already done this, but think about job sharing or furloughs instead of layoffs. Maybe ask for volunteers first. There could be people who would prefer to stay home for a variety of reasons. And then you don't have to lay people off that are more dependent on that job. Now, what to do in terms of guests and marketing. Here's a few other things we've come across. Focus on groups and outbound phone calls. Now, you have to be helpful and don't sound too opportunistic. That's really important. But you can, have some outreach to groups that you think might still be traveling, either previous customers or maybe associations. Here's a couple of ideas of people that are still traveling that I've heard of. So truckers, still staying overnight very often, and traveling nurses or, hotels that are near hospitals. They may have a bunch of doctors and nurses staying with them. And railroads are another one. There's, in Canada and the US, I've heard several hotels that, they had railroad workers staying with them before because, rail lines are long, and these people frequently, stay in hotels all the way across the country. And, they haven't changed. COVID hasn't changed anything for them. They're still running all the same routes, and they still have to stay in hotels. Also, power plants and maybe nuclear plants or other electricity plants and essential services. I heard about a hotel, I can't remember where it was, somewhere in the US, but they had about 100 people staying at their property for several weeks because they were involved in the construction of a nuclear plant or maybe refurbishment or something like that. So these are essential services, and you can potentially get some of that business if you look for it. This is another sort of unfortunate one, but some hotels have been able to get some occupancy from long-term stays, extended stays, or displaced people. If there was a storm or some flooding, there's people who've been, their house has been destroyed, and there's a variety of parts of the U.S. where hotels are, maybe at 30-40% occupancy because of these types of people. It's not something I would wish on anyone, but it's a reality of the market, and it could be an opportunity to get some occupancy. You also want to build relationships with channel partners. So maybe there's channels that you haven't thought about or haven't had the time to really build a relationship with or understand that channel that well. So, now everyone has time. Everyone's more willing to talk than in the past. So you might be able to build some relationships with channel partners that could benefit you when things do start moving again. Maintain marketing with your best ROI channels. So this applies to a couple different things. So what is your best ROI? Very often it's email. These are people who've stayed with you, who know something about you. They've probably opted in. So this could be a good ROI channel, and it's free as well, right? So the other thing in terms of ROI is like Facebook. You can target a lot of people, but it's kind of like concentric circles. A lot of these people may not have ever heard of you, so that costs a little bit more money. But if they're people who've already clicked on your ads, or maybe they already follow your business page or something like that, run Facebook ads just to those people who already know you. And I'm still seeing ads from those people that I follow. And it's a good idea so that you're top of mind when those people do decide to start traveling. Or maybe if you post a great experience, it might kind of prompt somebody to say, you know what, I need to go there. It would do me good to go on a trip and go there. Let's see. Also remember that some guests need extra empathy and maybe going through a lot of unusual stress. I've heard of a lot of strange behavior in certain properties, and people are, more stressed out than usual. And remember that, for some people, whatever they're experiencing at your hotel could be something they remember forever, and maybe even tell a lot of people. So fairly or unfairly, it could reflect poorly. Here's some things that some of our hotels are doing. They're renovating rooms that maybe could not be done when they had higher occupancy. And they're also cleaning up rooms and rates in each software application. So that does tend to get messy, and sometimes it's hard to change when you're doing transactions all the time. And then fixing connections between systems. So as many of you know, sometimes, everything is perfectly clean and organized in one system and clean and organized in another system, but it's not really compatible with each other, and that can cause a variety of problems. But from the PMS to the channel manager to the OTAs and the booking engine, make sure all of those connections are good and clean and as simple as possible, and working 100% accurately. I find sometimes that during normal times, when occupancy is 70, 80, 90%, that trying to fix these things is like trying to fix a car as it's already driving down the road. So this is, in some ways, it's unfortunate, but it's also a unique opportunity when the business is stopped and you can fix all of those things with very little risk. Also take some time off to recharge mentally and exercise perhaps. A lot of people say this and say they're going to do this, but then they don't actually do it. So follow through on that. That'll help you day to day, and it'll also help you once things get started again. Also, education and retooling the brain kind of falls into the same category. You know, maybe that's why you're here on this webinar. We also have a whole bunch of specials on our website, you know, some discounted courses. So pick up some new tools, learn some new things, maybe even if it's just a distance conversation with another employee in your hotel that you don't normally get to talk with. Maybe have a conversation about what their area of the business needs. You know, think about the things you never have time to do when the hotel's operating at normal capacity. Then also start making plans for reopening. You know, it could happen rather quickly. I mean, I think it's still probably, you know, a little bit away for most hotels, but you want to have checklists for everything that needs to be done, because in the moment, things are going to get crazy and you're going to forget things. So have checklists for everything that needs to be done to reopen, and then look at the things that you could start doing now and do the ones that you can. Another thing is packages. You might want to design new packages. So people are now traveling with a different mindset. They have slightly different needs. Your operations may be different in terms of the way that you handle housekeeping or food and beverage. And you could design some new packages around that and make it appealing, make it unique. I think Hilton is coming out with a program called Clean Stay or something like that. And they're partnering with Lysol, which is obviously a huge global brand for cleaning and disinfecting, right? And also I think the Mayo Clinic, which are obviously leading researchers in disease and so on. And so that sort of program between those three companies is probably going to start showing up in advertising, but it's really about promoting a clean stay that is as safe as possible. So I think that's going to become an integral part of marketing once things start moving again. So those are my thoughts for today. I want to leave you with one final thought from the Dalai Lama, which is, you know, has to do with worry. And a lot of people I talk to out there are worried these days. But, you know, if a problem is fixable, if a situation is such that you can do something about it, then there's no need to worry, right? But if it's not fixable, then there is no help in worrying. There's no benefit in worrying whatsoever. In other words, whether you can do something about it or not, worrying doesn't improve the situation at all. All it does is it makes you miserable. It's a good thing to take action when you can fix a problem, but it's not going to do any good to worry. So hopefully you won't worry too much. Hopefully some of this information was helpful. And let us know if you need additional help, and we'll keep doing these every month. And we hope to see you again on the next one. So thanks again, and we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.